In this exercise, let's learn a little bit about the setup of Krita and how we can build our first basic animation. Once you've got Krita installed and launched, let's create a new image. The size and dimensions for this one is going to be a custom document. The width of it is going to be 1920 pixels, make sure you got pixels selected, by 1080 pixels. The resolution won't really matter, but you can keep it at 300 pixels per inch if that's already set. Everything else about this is going to be exactly the same, so we can say create, and we can start with our own document. Now before we do anything else, I want to make sure your screen looks exactly like mine so that you can find everything that we're working with. If you go up to the Window drop-down menu, let's make sure your workspace is set to animation. This may move some things around and you can see how it closes out a couple of panels, but the most important things are all still here. And if I need to find anything, I can open it up later. Notice that in this setup, we have all of our tools and tool options up here at the very top. We've got our dockers and palettes and panels over here on the left. We've obviously got our workspace here in the middle. And then finally, we've got our animation timeline and all of our frames and onion skinning down here at the bottom. Now at any time, if you can't see any of these settings, we can always go up to the settings, down to dockers, and here's where all of the other little dockers and panels and palettes can be found and opened as well. Now the first habit to get into is to save your document. As soon as you create it, let's go up to File and down to Save As, and let's make sure we know where everything is going to be saved to. I've got a folder on my desktop called Animation Camp Work, and I'm going to call this the Timeline Basics. Now the tool that I'm make sure Krita is the file format that you have selected. This paintbrush looks like a little paintbrush icon, and with it selected, we can change the color that we're painting with up here at the top. Notice that you got two little swatches. The one at the top left is your foreground. With it selected, you can go to your color picker, and I'm just going to keep it a basic black for now. We'll say OK to that. The other thing you can do is to change what kind of paintbrush you're working on. By clicking on this, this will open up all the different kinds of brushes and erasers and different tools that you can use to make marks. Let's keep it simple. You can use something like a simple little pencil or even the basic little marker up here at the top, but whichever you choose. With it selected, you can always test out and see what it looks like. Remember, go to Edit and Undo to undo any marks that you create. Finally, with this tool selected, if you want to change the size of it, go over to the right-hand side and you can make it larger or smaller. I'm going to keep it relatively small so that I can get a feel for what it looks like whenever I make marks on my design. Now, the first thing I want you to notice is what layer you're working on. If you have a look at your Layers panel, notice that by default we've got a background layer that is locked. This means that it's only one solid color, and if I try to paint or draw or do anything with it, I get a little can't do that symbol, meaning I can't make any changes to that layer. It also gives me a paint layer 1 that is unlocked, and so this is the first layer by default that allows me to do something like paint and draw on top of it. The next thing to pay attention to when creating an animation is your animation timeline. Now by default, Krita does not create individual frames automatically. You've got to set it up so that you create each frame that you want. Before we create frames, we need to know what is our animation speed. How many frames per second is it going to represent? In order to set your frame rate, go over to the far right-hand side and look for the little 3-bar icon. From here, notice that we can give a duration for it and this is measured in frames, and then we can do a frame rate. Right now it's 24 frames per second, and this clip is ending after 100 frames. This means this will last roughly 4 seconds long, a little bit over since it's 24 frames per second. Now if you want to change the frame rate at any time, you can always type in a new number here. Let's say I dropped it down to 12 frames per second, and I click away, and you can see how it'll adjust the numbers on top of here. This means for every 1 second of animation, there should be 12 frames that I can work within. Now, when adding frames, there's two different ways that we can approach creating individual frames. Again, make sure you're on Paint Layer 1 and you've got the first 0 frame selected. To create a blank keyframe, click on this little button that allows you to add a blank frame. When you do this, you'll notice that the little icons on this layer also change, and it adds a little light bulb to the end of this. This is going to be our onion skinning that we'll see later. From here, I've still got layer 1 or layer 0 selected, frame 0 selected, and let's go in and paint just a simple little circle. We won't really worry what it looks like. We're just going to paint it and add it onto here. Once it's painted, notice now that there's a little dash going along. This means if I was to press the play button, you would see that frame over and over again, and it would hold that frame as long as you want it to hold for. But let's say I wanted this little dot to be able to move across the screen. Now, in order to do this, I would either need to redraw it or make a copy of it. Now, if you want to redraw it, let's go back down to our timeline and choose the next keyframe. Notice that it's highlighted and you also get the number right here. You can press this button again and it will create a new blank keyframe. It'll clear your canvas and allow you to draw to the next frame. You can then select the next frame, frame number 2, choose to create a new blank one, and then draw again. And simply repeat this process, selecting the frame you want and drawing what you need. Now, if I wanted to be able to play this, all I have to do is to select my first frame, and I can press play, and you can see now it's just a short animation here. If I wanted to loop over just those, I can highlight by clicking and dragging. Oops, excuse me, clicking on the first, don't click and drag, but click and hold Shift, and it will select all of them. Now, when I press play, it'll replay all 3 of those. Of course, in doing this, I've got a couple of problems. Notice that every time I make a new blank frame, I lose where my other position was. And so if I'm trying to redraw something, sometimes it's very hard to know right where the last frame was and how I should redraw it. This is where your onion skins come in handy. Onion skinning gives you the ability to see what was behind your previous frames in your timeline. You can also look ahead, but in general, I like to look at the last couple of frames that we've got. Notice on here, frame 0 is the frame that you're currently on, and then I can look back 1, 2, 3, or more key frames that I've drawn on. As long as these are highlighted, those are the 3 that we'll see behind it. Now, in order to activate this, this is also, by the way, the opacity of each. Notice that you lose opacity as it goes along. I'll demonstrate that in a second. Now, in order to activate onion skinning, go down to your layer, and this is where we turn on that little light bulb. With that light bulb turned on, check out what's on my timeline or my drawing area now. It's highlighted in red. Those are the previous frames. And if I choose my other frames, you can see as I back up, you can see where the previous drawings were in previous parts of my timeline. So doing this allows me to select new keyframes, make a new blank one, and I can see where it was before, and I can move forward and draw it. So I've got onion skinning turned on, choose my new keyframe, make a new blank one, and then redraw it from here. Choose a new one, and then redraw it from here. Let's repeat this process for the first second, so all the way up to frame number 12. Choose a new one, create a new blank one, and then draw it as it goes across your screen. My main interest in doing this is just getting used to the process of selecting the frame that you're working on, using my onion skins to see where it was previously, and then creating new frames in order to animate it. Once you're ready, you can hold down Shift and select all the frames that you want to play, in this case these 12, then press play, and then you can see how it will play through all of those. Now, at any time, if you've made a mistake, you can always go back and you can correct those. For example, I've hit stop. You can see these first couple of frames, how they're off, and I was just kind of placing them where I thought it should be. If I need to, I can go in and I can move them around. Instead of using our paintbrush tool, let's use our move tool, which is the crossed arrows in the center of your toolbox. With that frame selected, you can click and drag and place it where you want it to be. You can then choose previous frames, and you can move those around until they are also in line where you want them to be as well too. So now I can see that one's off. We'll move it over, and this one's way off. And then each one here is starting to get off as well too. So go through and make any corrections that are necessary, placing your animation of your little dot where you want it to be, and then use your move tool to move them over right where it needs to be and once it's placed. Now we can test out our animation by holding Shift and selecting all of our frames. Press play, and now it's actually moving along nicely. Now that we've got this done, let's animate this a little bit faster. We're still going to use blank keyframes, but I'm going to show you a technique that allows you to automatically make a blank keyframe rather than clicking on this button each individual time. With the frame 13 selected, so this will be the next second of animation that we want, let's animate this going back to the left. First, go back to your frame options and click on the little 3 bars over to the side. This time, choose this option on the far right. When you click the down arrow, choose Auto Blank or Auto Key Blank. Now, whenever you start to draw, it's automatically going to create a blank keyframe for you. So notice that I have frame 13 selected. I'm going to grab my paintbrush tool one more time. And this time, when I start to paint, it'll automatically erase away whatever I have and give me a blank keyframe. I didn't have to select this one. So I can go to my next keyframe and I can go and paint there. And now all I have to do is to choose my next keyframe on my timeline, move forward, and it automatically generates that frame for me. So this is a great simple way of drawing without actually having to hit the new keyframe each and every time. Now if you run out of space before you run out of frames, don't worry about it. This is mainly just to get you up and ready and working within the flow. I'm going to stop mine right here. So I didn't quite make it to 2 seconds. Now let's go back and play our animation. Hold down Shift and select all of them. Press play. Now you can see it goes back and forth. All right, we'll stop it for here. Let's go up to File and let's save our progress that we have for now. The next thing that we can do in order to animate our dot is to simply copy the animation that we already have. Now this comes in handy if you don't want to redraw everything or have a new kind of drawing each time. This allows you to take what you've already drawn and simply move it over or make a copy and modify that copy. Let's do this technique on a separate layer. Go over to your Layers panel. Notice that I've got layers selected. At the very bottom, we're going to hit the little plus sign, and that's going to give us paint layer number 2. Remember, when you create a new layer by default, it's not an animated layer. It's just a static, basic drawing layer. So the first thing we need to do is to add a blank keyframe to it. So let's click on that button to start off with a basic keyframe. As we've done with the others, I'm going to use my paintbrush tool, and all I'm going to do is to draw a dot that mimics the placement of that one. So I'm just going to place a dot right about here. With it selected, this time, instead of painting a new keyframe, I want to copy what I have. So we can go down to my next keyframe, and we can click the second button, which copies what I have. This time, rather than erasing it away, it actually made a copy right on top of it. Rather than redrawing it, let's choose our cross arrow move tool and simply let's move it over. Again, I can't see where it was previously until I turn on my onion skinning. So the last thing I want to do is to click that little light bulb, and now I can see where it was before. So let's move over to the next frame. We're going to copy this frame and then move it into position. Choose the next frame, choose copy, and move it into position. Repeat this process for roughly the first second, kind of mimicking the same placement that you had before and movement of each time. Just remember, choose the frame and then make the copy. Choose the next frame and make the copy, then make the move. You always have to choose the frame and make the copy before you make the move. If you wind up choosing the frame and then moving it, it's going to give you a blank one, or it's not going to copy it at all. Oops, let's make the copy and then make the move. Again, at any time, if you want to test it, simply select those frames and play it, and now you've got the same thing. Notice that because it's a copy, this gives me a perfect movement of that animation rather than a little scraggly one that's redrawn each time. If you have to redraw something, then there's always going to be some slight variations, even if you try to get it perfectly, that tend to crop up. That may be an aesthetic that you want, or it may be something that you don't. The final thing that we're going to do is, just like the last time, we're going to make this simpler by turning on automatic keyframes. Again, go back to your 3-bar options, go over to the drop-down arrow, and this time choose Auto Key Duplicate. With Auto Key Duplicate, when I choose my new frame, in this case the one next to it, when I click to drag or make a change to it, whoops, make sure it's selected, there we go, it automatically duplicates it. I just need to remember to select the next keyframe each time before I make my movement. So new frame, click and drag, new frame, click and drag. And this comes in handy to make things go a lot faster on your timeline. Let's see if I can get it to catch up, and to make things look perfect as you animate them. We'll do the same thing all the way to the end. Looks like he's caught up now. Great. Now let's select our keyframes, press play, and you can see how both of them allow me to create my keyframe basics. Let's go back up to File and Save it one last time. Then from here we can go to File and we can close our document.